I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is the TechCentral Show, brought to you today by MTN Business. If you haven't already done so, youtube.com/TechCentral is the address to subscribe to us on YouTube. And why not find us on Meta Platforms' brand new Threads app using the handle TechCentralZA. Now, the CEO of Takealot Group joins us, Mamongae Mahlare. Thank you so much for joining us in the TechCentral studio.
Absolutely. Thank you, Duncan.
Mamongae, you've been in the Takealot Group CEO role now for almost 2 years already. Feels like just yesterday you were appointed, actually. But tell us a bit about yourself and your background. I believe you were in the sugar industry prior to joining Takealot.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a chemical engineer by training.
Okay.
And I spent a fair amount of time, however, more in the business side of things. I spent a number of years in commercial roles within SABMiller, Unilever, and also CCBSA, which was part of SABMiller in South Africa.
Okay.
And before I joined Illovo Sugar at a time, a month before sugar tax went live. So I think it was a very interesting journey of navigating a business and an industry.
Yes.
During very challenging times, but a great journey nonetheless. So I'm very excited to be part of Takealot Group.
So have you always been in a business or management role? I mean, you studied chemical engineering.
Yes.
Did you ever get to put those skills to the test?
Yes, I did. I did projects. I joined Unilever straight out of university and worked in the Boksburg factory making margarine.
Okay.
Which was a very great introduction because, as you know, Unilever is fantastic in terms of graduate development, and I think also the environment in terms of the opportunities and the responsibility I got given. I think like getting to run a project 6 months out of university was incredible, and then I moved also into the production side for a number of years, and so I did do that for a while, and it was actually during that journey that it felt like you're at the end of decision making. Your job was to execute, make the impossible possible in the factory,
Right.
and I really got interested in the business side of things, like why these things were important to do, and do they make business sense?
Right.
Are we going to make money out of all of these different packages that we're being asked to put together? And that's why I transitioned more into the business side, because I was particularly curious about how this whole organization,
how it all fits together.
How it all fits together and the why. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So a large part of your career then in fast-moving consumer goods. You're now in e-commerce. How did the Takealot job come about? Was it advertised and you applied? Did someone poach you?
No, I got tapped on the shoulder about the opportunity, and then you said, well, you always, my first interaction with the business was obviously as a consumer.
Sure.
And so I hadn't actually conceptualized the business side of this, new business. And so, I had to engage with the opportunity over a couple of months, and I thought, this is a growth sector, and it's also, it's leading in this country and even globally. Digital markets are where the growth nodes are, and so it would be fantastic to be part of building a sector and building a business that has great ambitions.
So what's changed on your watch? In October it will have been 2 years. What have you done differently? What's changed to Takealot on your watch?
I think what has really been a big privilege is inheriting the business that is of great quality, and the exceptional leadership team, great culture with that's very much values driven, and a very clear strategy. So to be honest, my job was not to change, but really how do we continue the momentum that has been established, and how do we continue building on making the vision a reality. I think, contextually, I think the changes that have happened have not been unique to Takealot Group, but they've been unique to our context. And our job was, how do we respond to that? And the kind of things that have changed was like, I joined at the tail end of COVID. In the following months, there was in the Ukraine war, and all that precipitated with it, petrol prices going up 60%, and we're a logistics business. What that meant in terms of consumer pressure. Prime rates are up, over 575 basis points. And I guess, all of that says, if you're going to be in business for any number of years, you are going to go through these waves of changes that would happen in an economy. And our job is, how do we really continue to innovate in that context and reposition our playbook to remain a growth business.
Yeah. Now, you took over this group CEO role from the founder CEO, Kim Reid.
Yes.
He's still on the board, right? He's the chairman of the business. How closely do you work together? I mean, he was obviously intimately involved in building this business. And has it been perhaps a little difficult for him to let go, given he was the founder CEO? There's fresh blood in now. How have you worked together?
No, we work actually incredibly well together. I mean, the more I'm in the business, the more I admire the man and the team that have built this business, because, it is not easy to build a robust, well-run business with all of the, headwinds that you deal with as an emerging business, as well as an emerging sector in this kind of economy. So we work well together. I respect his insight, and I think what is really helpful is that, when you have built a business, there are a lot of things that you see coming a mile away, and so he's been great in the role of providing that direction and steer, but also being very good about, it's your job to run the operations and to deal with that. And he's there to provide, the guidance, the sounding board. Right. And also to kind of, help calibrate, to say, you guys, you need to move faster here, and what about this? And, so like the challenger supporter role, which is exactly what he should be doing.
Right.
But, accountability is clear. Okay. I'm responsible for making sure we deliver what's required for the business.
Yeah. And this business is almost 100% owned, if not 100% owned now, by Naspers. How do you work with the Naspers team? What's the relationship there like?
I think the relationship is a lot more like a shareholder type of relationship. Okay. It's an accountability and a governance-based relationship. Okay. They are very good about understanding that it's our job to run the business, and so leave us to do our part. And they're incredibly supportive, particularly when it comes to all of the investment decision, in terms of also sharing some of what they see around the globe in similar businesses, and seeing how we can connect and benefit from those connections. And I think it's very valuable to have that outside in perspective. But
it's a hands-off relationship. They don't meddle in the day-to-day running of Takealot.
Absolutely not. Look, I think, they have a big business, a big portfolio to run.
They've got other issues too on their plate, yes.
And also, you these are entrepreneurial businesses, and if you want entrepreneurial teams to behave in an entrepreneurial way, you need to give them the space to be able to do so, but be very clear about the lines of accountability. And there's a very professional social system that we operate within, to make sure that there's, you're always on the same page about what's going on in the business. And I think that's important.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you joined Takealot when COVID was still raging, 2021. I think it was still raging in October 2021, or maybe it was starting to tail off, but it had just had a transformative impact on e-commerce, not just in South Africa, but around the world. In your view, how did COVID change online shopping in South Africa, and what impact did it have on Takealot?
I mean, COVID was very beneficial for the business. I mean, in those 2 years, the business doubled in size.
Good grief. Wow.
And so that was quite transformative. What it did do for South Africans, I think it helped bring e-commerce closer to people's consideration sets. And it helped demonstrate the value, the convenience that e-commerce brings towards how people can live their lives better.
Yeah.
So we did see a lot more engagement in terms of consumers buying online. And not just kind of in the metros like you'd expect, across all of South Africa. And because we have a national footprint, we were well positioned to be able to service all consumers from rural Sekhukhune land to Bantry Bay to Kakamas and all other really exotic places
I've been to Kakamas. Very small place.
And I think that is, a lot of what is important. And also how it did transform was we saw high growth of SMEs that participated in the platform, whether it was on Takealot.com or Mr. D in terms of more restaurants then listing on the platform. And I think it was positive. So both for growth of SMEs, growth of job opportunities, and growth of e-commerce as a channel.
So post the pandemic, as the economy opened up again and people felt comfortable going into stores again, was there a bit of a drop off in e-commerce sales, or has that high level we saw during COVID been maintained into 2023?
There was definitely a shift because people did return to stores, but all of that was expected. And so what you saw was more a slowdown in levels of growth, but not a shift down in terms of the base, because we have grown through that readjustment, and we continue to grow. And I think where we are now is back on the long-term trend that we project for the market evolution.
Right. How fast is the e-commerce market in South Africa expected to grow in the next few years?
Well, I think, there is no one single point of view, but we have triangulated with a number of different data points and also using some of our own IP. And we reckon that the sector should, be growing in the high teens for the next couple of years. I mean, I think we need to remember that, e-commerce is only 4% of total retail. And in comparable peer emerging markets around the world, at a minimum, you're looking at between 12 and 20%.
Why is it so low? Why is it so low here?
I mean, I'm sure there are a number of factors, but some of it is just, Takealot itself is only 12 years old. So when you think, a lot of other businesses only started around 12 years ago.
Yes.
Whereas other markets have been in the e-commerce game for at least double or triple that time. Sure. So I think it's just about a time and stage of
maturity of the market,
of evolution, and maturity of the market. And also I think, we talk about access to data, the cost of data. You talk about levels of service that have been digitized. I think the more general services are digitized, like if I was able to apply for my ID online, or I was able to do a lot of my government services or other services that are part of the social fabric online, that creates greater comfort in terms of being able to transact online for the general populace, which increases, therefore, the adoption of e-commerce, etc. And I think there are signs that we are going in that way. You know, our banking system has become a lot more sophisticated. You know, money transfers, the adoption of smartphones. So I think we are on the journey. We're just, you know, a couple of decades behind, but, you know.
Decades behind. We've got a lot of catching up to do then. So we should be growing faster than many other markets in terms of e-commerce.
Well, I think, you know, it's all a relative game, right? Because there's, you know, there's then, you know, the level of investment that you need to put into e-commerce, because it's not, you know, like any other business, it does take investment to do so. And that's why we believe that the growth that we're going to see in the long term will continue to be double digit for some time. So yes. And it does need to continue to be supported by, you know, your regulatory environment. It has to be supported by kind of just the health of retail in general and the economy. So I think the phases will be influenced by, you know, our socioeconomic you know, dynamics.
Environment, yeah. And it's in a tough place at the moment.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about your latest numbers, because NicePass, I think it was last week, could be in the week before, published its full year results, in which they always disclose some numbers associated with Takealot. Not a lot, but some numbers. And this year, NicePass has disclosed that Takealot reported a $22 million loss for the full year ended 31 March. That's around 400 million rand, I think, at the current exchange rate. And your revenue and GMV, which is gross merchandising value. What is that again?
Yeah,
what is GMV?
Value.
Why is it so important in a retail context? What is GMV? Why is it measured? Gross merchandising value.
Yeah, because it's really just the price at which you sell the product times the number of products you sell.
Right.
You know, but that's not necessarily always the money you make.
Yes. I've just noticed a lot of retailers use this term GMV, and not from the retail space. I'm not sure why it's important relative to revenue.
Because it's comparable across all other retailers, regardless of your business model.
Right.
I mean, if you think about the Takealot.com business, its revenue, you know, its GMV, you know, its business is, there's a retail business and there's a marketplace business.
Yeah.
And so you see the difference. On the one side, my revenue is made out of the fees that I earn out of providing the service to the marketplace. And on the other side,
it's the gross value.
It's then the margins that I make, you know. So it's very different business models, but GMV is comparable across all of them, similar to the food delivery business, or even grocery delivery. So yeah.
Okay. So according to NicePass, your GMV in rand terms was 13%, down from 46% in the previous year, and your revenue growth was 12%. Still a respectable number if you compare it to traditional retailers, but that's also down from 36%. So there is some pressure on the business. What are the principal reasons for this slowdown we're seeing, and what does the prognosis look like?
I think the reasons for the change that you're seeing is where we started the conversation, which is what was the effect of COVID on the business. And the number one thing was, you know, the growth that you're comparing backwards
was in a COVID year.
Was in a COVID year. Totally different context and not a business as usual growth. So I think the growth that we saw last year, that was the first year. I mean, it was only June last year that the masks came off.
Yes.
Right? And so I guess we must keep that in context.
One forgets quickly.
You know, right now it feels like COVID was years ago.
It does.
But it was only literally a year ago that the masks came off, right? So that environment is a huge change, therefore, in terms of the operating context and readjustment to the new, back to the new old in a way. And so I would treat that result as an indication of a shift that is happening in the context. And as I said, we expect growth outlook to continue to be in the high teens going forward.
So a bit of an acceleration from what we've seen here. And this is kind of a new base, I guess, post-COVID.
Yes.
And you're going to grow again from this point.
And from June to June, then you've kind of actually rebased out of COVID.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, the levels of growth will to some degree be influenced by the context and the pressure on the consumer. But
Sure.
fundamentally, given that e-commerce is still, only 4% of total retail, the real growth for the business is about how do you get more consumers, having e-commerce as a consideration of their purchase choices, rather than trying to, we don't depend on economic growth to
Right.
drive e-commerce.
Right.
It's about a proposition growth and a penetration growth.
Okay. Interesting. So, what does the profit outlook look for Takealot? I mean, $22 million loss. I think you were close to break even in the prior year. The business is obviously still investing for growth. Does it matter that it's not profitable at this stage? And do you continue to make losses in the coming years, or is there an aggressive focus on turning this business profitable?
So absolutely. So first of all, I think it's important to zoom out a bit and say, one is, let's talk about, there's the Takealot Group result, which is what is being reported and what you see.
Right.
We must bear in mind that Takealot.com, which is one of the businesses of Takealot Group, is profitable and has been profitable since 2021. As your last conversation with my chairman, Kim Reid, he mentioned that, right? And that has stayed profitable. So that's an important marker to land. And then secondly is like you've got Superbalist and Mr. D businesses that are still coming out of their J curve.
Right.
And therefore, I think it's also important to bear in mind that given the stages of evolution of those businesses, it is normal that there are some losses. Of course, Naspers has come out quite clearly that across the world, across the entire portfolio, the drivers for profitability of all of their businesses, and that's been the drive for this business as well. It took 10 years for Takealot.com to break profitability, which is actually phenomenal when you compare it to how long it took a lot of other global competitors to be able to achieve that in their years of evolution.
Sure.
And so we're confident that both of these businesses will also achieve their profitability in the next 2 financial years, and that's what we're driving towards.
And that'll lift the whole group into the green, potentially.
Then we will lift the group into the green, and hopefully there are no rude awakenings from a context point of view as well. Because I think, for the businesses like Takealot.com to remain profitable, given some of the headwinds we've seen. I mean, we're essentially part of our really, of our business is a big logistics business, and petrol, diesel price gone up 60% last year, right? And you look at what load shedding has done. You look at all the other headwinds that the business have had to navigate through. I think it's a phenomenal outcome, and I think it's phenomenal that even the other growth businesses, withstood that and are still being positioned for, more resilient and on a growth trajectory, and that remains the same. We want all our businesses to be profitable. That's why we're in business, and we believe that, we need to achieve that in a sustainable way, and that's important.
Okay. Tell me a bit about your relationship with Pick n Pay, how that came about and where that's going.
Yeah, so, I think that was an exciting partnership for us. When we think about some of the, growth opportunities in e-commerce, I think it was evident that grocery, on-demand grocery,
that really took off in
one
COVID.
of those.
Yeah.
It absolutely took off in COVID and continues to grow, because the proposition is very pertinent to everyday South Africans, particularly time-starved.
Yes.
Individuals, or even individuals where it provides a level of convenience. You don't have to get into a taxi to go do grocery shopping. It can come to you.
Yeah.
Now that we have such a good distribution of retail outlets across our landscape. So one of the growth notes for us was on-demand grocery. How do we get to play in that space? Mr. D is our on-demand business.
Yes.
We do, at the moment we do, food delivery, restaurant food delivery. We've got groceries. We have pets and gifting, and as an on-demand business, this was a big opportunity that we were looking into, and of course we explored lots of different models. And we then also was an opportunity to engage with Pick n Pay about, partnering to be able to provide this service.
Had you worked with them before? How did this relationship come about?
No, and I think it's. I don't know that there is only one particular thing that you connect all the way through, but I think in various conversations as we were looking at potential partners. They were also really thinking about how do they take their online presence forward.
Right.
And I think it was just a
meeting of the minds.
A meeting of the minds and an aligned proposition where each party brings something valuable to the table that the other, cannot bring. So that's what makes the partnership a productive one, because we provide, e-commerce expertise and, logistic backbone that is unparalleled, right? And then on the other side, they then bring, they're one of the leading grocery retailers in this country.
Yeah.
Deep expertise in that, and together we then were able to be able to form a partnership that is working, and I must admit it's been wonderful to see. I mean, from when we agreed to go live, it took us about 7 months to go live, and it was, credit to a phenomenal team that really pulled that all together. But beyond that, it's really investing in building the business and learning as we grow.
Sure.
And so far so good.
So what's the relationship like with Pick n Pay? Was this a project that you did, or is there a closer relationship, and do you see yourselves as Takealot working much more closely with Pick n Pay on possibly other projects going forward?
Yeah, look, I think we see it as a partnership, and we don't try and constrain what it could lead to. I think we've got to work on opportunities that have mutual benefit. Right, and so we're working with them on other initiatives as well. So like pick-up points, having, pick-up points in some of their outlets. It makes sense.
In Pick n Pay outlets, yes.
Yes, Pick n Pay outlets. So that makes sense, and we're looking. We've done 2, and we're looking at doing more of those, and we'll continue to explore all of those opportunities. I think there is power in partnerships, and we've seen that also in our Superbalist business in partnership with H&M.
Right.
If you pick the right partners, have a clear point of alignment, and you can both have like some real win-win outcomes out of that.
Yeah. Out of interest, though, I mean, the traditional retailers in South Africa, I think, were quite far behind when it came to e-commerce, and I think a lot of them have been investing significantly in their e-commerce capabilities since COVID hit. And certainly, some of the I've certainly noticed some retailers have definitely upped their game in terms of what they're offering into the market. Do you see Takealot Group's competition as principally the traditional retailers who are now starting to get into the online game, or do you see your principal competition being other e-commerce companies?
I mean, we see our business as a retail business.
Right.
The market is retail. E-commerce is a part of retail.
Okay.
So that answers who we
They're
see
all competitors.
as they're all competitors.
Okay.
So yes, that's how we see it.
Right. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, if I can call it that, and that's the rumors. They're nothing concrete yet, as far as I know, that Amazon is planning to launch a marketplace in South Africa before the end of this year. I don't know if you've heard anything else, but I've been hearing November, December this year. I don't know if there's anything else, any other rumors in the market. But what do you expect if they come? What do you expect the impact of that is going to be on the market broadly and on Takealot specifically?
Yeah, I think, if we have ambitions of e-commerce being, 12-20% of retail in this country, it goes to reason that there needs to be more players. And they would also see the same opportunity we are seeing to invest behind, right? So the opportunity is not about what exists today, is what this could be.
Yeah.
And so what we would expect is that with more investment, with more building of the category, with more continued challenge around how do we expand and innovate the offering and relevance of e-commerce in South Africans' life, that the adoption will therefore grow. So our expectations and our hope is that their entrance does bring about that investment in building the category and growing the sector.
Sure.
Because that's where the value lies fundamentally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the impact on Takealot Group, to be honest, I think it really just all depends on how they enter and how they approach the market, and I can't predict what that would look like.
Fair enough.
And so our focus is really staying focused on our core business and focus on delivering what is right for the consumer.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, this is, the war is won, and the value is built on the back of providing great consumer-centric service.
Yeah.
And that's what our focus is.
Do you need an answer to Amazon Prime? It's said they're going to launch Amazon Marketplace in South Africa with Amazon Prime, which we know in the US and in other markets has proved to be exceptionally popular. Does Takealot launch an equivalent service in this market?
Yeah, look, I think we will launch what we believe is appropriate and what is going to be relevant to the South African consumer. And it's not going to be a one-prong approach.
Yeah.
And that's about all I can say about that.
All right. Don't want to give away all your secrets at this stage,
Yes.
but we are months away potentially from a launch. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this market develops in the next few years, having two big players really having a go at each other, hammer and tongs.
Well, at least, to be honest, I don't think. I think, as you said, a lot of South African retailers have upped their investment in the sector, and so really the competition isn't going to be Amazon versus Takealot Group or Takealot.com. It's actually going to be, Takealot Group. It's going to be, Checkers. It's going to be
Walmart.
It's going to be, all of the other players. The TFG, you name it, Mr. Price.
Yes.
Everybody is investing in this, in their e-commerce, offering. And so the competition is sector-wide, and that's something we need to keep in mind.
It's getting tougher out there, isn't it? Is it putting pressure on margins?
Look, I think it's it's putting more juice around innovation and around focus, and being sharper about your offering.
Right.
Because and I think the business has done it well before, even in the absence of really tough competition, but because to build a compelling proposition that is scalable, you always needed to continue to innovate. So I think the competition is healthy, And at the end of the day,
consumers.
it's great. It's great for consumers. It's great for business. But it needs to be healthy competition, and I think so far we've seen it being healthy because everybody's been focused about how do I build my proposition to be scalable, relevant, and profitable.
What would be unhealthy competition in your view?
Oof. I think
price war.
Well, that's never been constructive. I've been in beer before, and we've seen
in beer
price wars and what all that does. I mean, it's not sensible, right? Because first of all, anything that is a war between organizations, like what is it in service of?
Gaining market share, I guess.
Yeah, but when if your business is about really providing a valuable service to consumers, you got to ask yourself, is this helping me to do that?
Right.
If at the end of the day it destabilizes sustainability of the underlying business, no, that's not helpful. So I think you got to have the consumer lens on it, and you got to have a long term view on it.
Yeah.
Is this going to add value?
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what may actually be a bigger threat to your business in the long term than Amazon or any other player in the market, and that's what's happening at the Competition Commission. They've been busy with this online markets. I forget the full name of the inquiry they're doing, an online markets inquiry in South Africa, which seems to have been dragging on for a very long time. They keep extending the deadline for the report that they're producing. I know that Takealot has been quite closely involved in this inquiry and has made submissions to the Commission. Just broadly, what are your views? What are your concerns about this inquiry that the Competition Commission is doing? Are you very worried about what might come out of this?
The Competition Commission.
I can see this as a vexing issue to you.
No, look, I think it's an important issue. As you said, any time where you are engaging with regulators, you have to pay proper attention to what is going on, and we you have to engage constructively, which we have been. A market inquiry by design, as I understand it, is about building understanding and knowledge of the marketplace, and about assessing whether or not there are any indication of competitive activity that might be, untoward towards growing the sector. We have participated quite actively, as you're aware, and quite constructively with the Commission along the journey. And at times we have struggled to understand what the intent is, but what we now understand is it was about really making sure that there is enablement for the sector to continue to grow, and in doing so, to create space for many players to also participate in the growth of the e-commerce or digital markets more broadly, because it wasn't really just about e-commerce. So what do I hope comes out of this? I hope what comes out of this is an acknowledgement around how actually the business model and the conduct of the Takealot Group over the last 13 years have been far more aligned to the objective of the Competition Commission that may have been obvious. As you're aware, the business is very much heavily integrated. It's in the business model around enabling SMEs.
This is your marketplace business.
Marketplace in Takealot.com, and the restaurant business in Mr. D, and in Superblis we have over 112 local brands. So very much all SME enablement. The ecosystem supports over 33,000 jobs. We have about 18,000 SMEs across the ecosystem that have been enabled on each of those platforms. So this is a sign of an inclusive it is also diverse, and those are part of the objectives of the the competition is more of an inclusive economy, and this is a demonstration of a model that works towards how you deliver that. So the one part is the appreciation of what these models can actually do towards actually making an inclusive economy and a growing economy, and one that also grows jobs, which I believe are the three important pillars to be considered there. The other hope is then around regulatory or policy frameworks that become more enabling.
Yeah.
Because as we said, we are probably 10, 15, 20 years behind some of our peers in terms of the maturity of our sector here. And the question is, will the outcomes of this report have elements around how do we leapfrog in terms of the development of this category to the direct benefit of growing this economy, creating jobs, and diversifying economic participation, because that's what SMEs do, right?
Yeah.
So that's my hope. And in terms of, and then my fears, therefore, if there is anything that is opposite to that, right? Because I think South Africa cannot afford a misstep in this sector. We absolutely cannot.
And there's a risk of that happening in your view if these regulations are too tough.
Look, it's unclear. And what I would say is my caution would be let us make sure that in progressing through this, that we are cognizant around being enabling and not constraining.
Sure.
And also about considering the timing of when we do things. I mean, 4% of retail for e-commerce, we're still nowhere. And it's hard to predict what the future is going to be. Today's emerging players, it's not a foregone conclusion that in 20 years' time it's going to be
the same.
The same. And it's important to create the room and the flexibility for our sector to grow towards making sure that homegrown champions are built in this country, just like other markets have been able to achieve, right? And so that's
so you'd
really
like to see
what
very
needs
much
to
a
happen.
hands-off approach. I mean, is there, in your view, given that the Commission is looking at this, do you think they have any argument in competition law to impose any regulatory solutions or interventions in the e-commerce market? Is there anything from a competition perspective that's broken in e-commerce in South Africa that needs fixing by a regulator, or should the Competition Commission be taking a completely hands-off approach for now?
Well, look, I mean, as a business player, you're always saying that, like, what is required to make sure that there is a responsible playground. And I think our competition laws are quite robust in my point of view, but I'm not an expert in that field, so I don't want to project too much.
From competition in the sector, I mean, it looks
the
like
sector is incredibly competitive. As you said, we are in a retail sector.
Yes.
And that is an important point of departure in considering even market definitions in this space. We are in retail.
You're not an IT company, you're a retailer.
I'm a retailer. I'm competing against established and emerging businesses in the same way. So today, when you want to buy a cell phone or a TV, or you want to buy groceries, you have a consideration set of options that I'm competing against. So I don't. I think the competition is very healthy. It's very robust in the sector, and I guess when you look at what is emerging globally, they are right to ask themselves the question around: are we creating an environment that is not going to duplicate the negatives of what we see globally, but can duplicate the positives of what we see globally. How do we think about that? How do we make sure that our environment is showing signs of more of the positive benefits? So I think it's appropriate that they concern themselves with those. And it's equally appropriate to also say, how do we make sure that, we are more deliberate and cautious around what we do when, to make sure that we create a space for this to evolve in a way that is going to be relevant to South Africa. Because each market has its nuances, and because we have the benefit of learning from what has happened elsewhere, we are unlikely to just replicate what exists, because even in the business model may be the same, but how you actually execute it in South Africa, there are local nuances.
Yeah.
There are homegrown realities. There's high unemployment rate, our education level, etc., etc. All of those things will shape how this industry evolves in this country and what it does need to be enabled. Whereas in some markets, those things may not be necessary. So my view is that the sector is competitive. I think the sector is healthy. I think they are well within their right to make sure that the environment is conducive. And our hope is that as we move forward, that it will be more focused around enabling and a more deliberate approach.
Okay. So in other words, by all means, investigate the market, understand the market, but then tread lightly.
Yes. I think that and because there's a lot that is unknown, we're still so nascent in our evolution, and our context is unique. That there are South African nuances that we need to appreciate as we think about this thing. We need more jobs, more businesses across, the nation, like decades ago. And this is, quite honestly, one of the few frontiers that has demonstrated, there's clear evidence. Takealot Group numbers, 33,000 jobs, 18,000 SMEs enabled, in 10 years. Multiply that by 10, transformative for this country. Whether it's just, and it's not going to be just a Takealot Group story. It's going to be with multiple players, because we've seen that investment happening in this space. And I'm particularly passionate about the power of e-commerce as a great equalizer for our economy.
Before I let you go, and I know there's a lot of balls in the air at the moment in this industry. Competition Commission is but one of them. But so let me ask you what this sector is going to look like at the end of this decade. 7 years from now, what do you think is going to happen with e-commerce? What percentage, first of all, of total retail sales will be online in South Africa? And how do you see the industry developing over the next few years, given that it's likely that Amazon's coming in, the market's getting more competitive, there is a regulator paying interest in the space. What is e-commerce going to look like in South Africa at the end of this decade?
That's such an important question, and it's such a... And I think the answer becomes, a lot of it depends.
Okay. Of course, right? On so many different things.
Exactly those, what does the regulation do? What are the other things that can take place that enable the environment or not? But that notwithstanding, is like, what is the potential? I think there's a potential for, in 7 years for sure, for the sector to have doubled again, to be at least about, 7 to 8% of retail. We expect growth out of all of the different sectors, so there's a lot of general merchandise, there's a grocery delivery, there's a food delivery, there's a whole lot of services, and we expect more of other segments of retail to also go online, and a lot more services that are going to then really grow out of that ecosystem. And I think that's where it also becomes fascinating, and the way the multiplier effect extends beyond kind of like the core e-commerce businesses, as all of the other ecosystem opportunities that arise as a consequence of scale in the space are going to be, can be quite phenomenal, actually.
Is the logistics issue solved in this country, or is more work needed there to get down the cost of delivering e-commerce goods to the end user?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what's the problem statement when it comes to
a lot of people don't even
logistics?
have addresses in this country,
Yeah.
which is a problem.
It's actually not a problem.
Is it not? What 3 words and those sort of services? I suppose.
My parents live in a village where there are no street addresses. And initially I also thought well, there goes e-commerce opportunity for being able to deliver things to them. But they get Takealot.com or Superbalist deliveries today.
How?
And it's quite simple. First of all is, GPS technology is you can drop a pin in terms of where the house is, and we can get there.
There are ways around it.
As a consequence. So I think addresses are no longer an issue. It was a problem, there's a solution, and now we're able to move forward. I think obviously the infrastructure is an important contributor towards, logistic costs. I think, whether it's roads or whether it's petrol prices, particularly petrol prices are, because that's really a huge part of the logistic costs. So I think the more we have as a network around this country that is, that drives efficiency, the better it will be for e-commerce. But I think it's an opportunity, and the people have moved into that space to provide, to close the gap, as it were. And that's enabled, the business to be able to continue. We have invested in our own logistics network to make sure that we can provide the national footprint service and be able to get to Kakamas and get to Sekukuni land, and make sure that our consumers get the same quality of service regardless of your geography or whether you have an address or not. And I believe that has presented an opportunity which is powerful.
Well, while we're on logistics, I said I was going to. This is promised my final question. The post office. It's largely dysfunctional at the moment, from what I can tell. Is there a role for the post office in e-commerce going forward? I mean, I think there's a court case going on at the moment about the post office trying to enforce a monopoly it claims it has over parcels that weigh less than a kilogram. If the court sides with the post office, is that going to be devastating for the e-commerce industry? And do you see a role for the post office at all in e-commerce going forward?
Well, I think the first question is, is there going to be a post office? It's unclear at the moment as there are liquidation, issues circulating around that. So I don't know if post office will be
might just disappear.
even something that we can talk about. And I think from what we can read in terms of what some of the stuff that they had been intending to do, it was more going to be like, a toll on 1 kilogram or less prices. So the intent is not really to do the delivery of 1 kg, because if you have the right to, then somebody must pay you a fee for.
Oh, they want to collect a tax, do they?
So that's because today is, they would need to be able to be a player, to provide a real service on the ground. They would need significant investment in technology, investment in capability, and really revive all of that network that in a lot of areas has ceased to be functional. So, to be honest, it would be quite a big startup that they would have to do to be able to play a meaningful on the ground role.
Yes.
And so there's that outcome, and then the other alternative is, you collect a toll fee for parcels,
which wouldn't be great for e-commerce because it's just going to increase costs for the end user.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it would not be a deal breaker. I think the businesses in e-commerce have a real a service that they are delivering. And they will continue to do so.
Yes.
It would be unfortunate if there are more hurdles being put along the way. As you said,
why should e-commerce players be propping up some zombie parastatal? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But that's my opinion. I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
Yes.
Mamongae Mahlare is CEO of Takealot Group. Thanks so much for coming into the studio. It's been a great discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you.